Picture this: a dark, quiet road in the dead of night, the only sound the steady hum of tires against asphalt. A lone SUV glides through the empty streets of Canton, Ohio, just past midnight. Then, out of nowhere, red and blue lights pierce the darkness, flashing in the rearview mirror. A routine traffic stop, you'd think. But what happens when the driver isn't just anyone? She's a decorated military officer, a woman who's faced danger most of us can't imagine. And the officer pulling her over is about to learn a lesson in what power really means. This is a story about respect, accountability, and standing up when it counts. Stick around, because this one's going to hit you right in the chest. The night was cold, the kind of February chill that creeps through your jacket, no matter how tightly you pull it. Major Cassandra Hayes gripped the wheel of her government-issued SUV, its black exterior blending into the night. She'd just left a grueling meeting at a military base 3 hours south, her mind already drifting to the promise of a warm bed and a quiet morning. Her eyes were sharp, her driving steady. She wasn't speeding, wasn't swerving, wasn't doing anything to draw attention. The dashboard clock glowed 12:15 a.m. and the streets of Canton were deserted, save for a stray delivery truck rumbling in the distance. But in the shadows of a side street, Officer Nathan Carter was restless. 12 years on the force had given him a certain edge, a belief that his badge meant control, no questions asked. He sat in his cruiser, the air inside stale with the scent of a half-finished energy drink. His phone screen lit up his face as he scrolled, bored, waiting for something to break the monotony of a slow shift. Then Cassandra's SUV rolled by. Maybe it was the out-of-state plates, or maybe it was just the itch of a long night. He tossed the can aside, the aluminum clattering against the passenger seat, and flipped on his lights. The cruiser roared to life, pulling out behind her. The red and blue flashes filled Cassandra's rearview mirror. She blinked, a flicker of surprise crossing her face, but her training kicked in. Stay calm, assess the situation. She eased the SUV to the side of the road, her hands visible on the wheel, her breathing steady. The cruiser's door slammed shut, the sound sharp in the quiet night. In her side mirror, she saw a tall figure approaching, one hand resting on his holster, the other clutching a flashlight that cut through the dark like a blade. Officer Carter didn't bother with the passenger window. He went straight to hers. "License and registration," he said, his voice flat, no hint of courtesy. Cassandra kept her hands where he could see them, rolling the window down halfway. "Officer, may I ask why I was stopped?" Her tone was polite but firm, the kind of voice that carried authority without raising an octave. Carter tilted his head, the flashlight beam hitting her face, harsh and unyielding. "You were drifting lanes. Didn't signal. Looked like you might be impaired." Cassandra's eyebrow lifted, just a fraction. She hadn't drifted, she hadn't touched a drop of alcohol, but she felt the weight of this moment. Her dark skin, the late hour, the empty road. She'd been in situations like this before, not here, but in other places, other times, where a question could turn into a problem. Her pulse quickened, but her face stayed calm. "I wasn't drifting," she said, her voice steady as steel. Carter's grip on the flashlight tightened. "License and registration," he repeated, louder. His tone edged with impatience. She moved slowly, deliberately, reaching for the glove box. Her fingers brushed the cool leather of her wallet as she pulled out her ID and the vehicle's papers. As she handed them over, she added, "This is a government vehicle. I'm a federal employee." Carter glanced at the ID, his expression unreadable, but a faint smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Military?" he asked, his voice carrying a hint of mockery. "Doesn't mean you're above the law." "I never said I was," Cassandra replied, her eyes locking onto his. The air between them felt like a taut wire, ready to snap. Carter's tone sharpened, his shadow looming larger in the dim streetlight. "Step out of the vehicle." Cassandra blinked, her jaw tightening just slightly. "On what grounds?" "I said, step out. I'm conducting a sobriety check." His hand hovered near his holster, a challenge in his eyes, daring her to push back. Cassandra took a slow breath, her mind racing, but her movements controlled. She'd led convoys through war zones, made split-second decisions under fire. This was nothing she couldn't handle. But she knew the stakes, knew how quickly things could spiral, especially for someone like her, alone on a dark road. "I've complied," she said, her voice even. "I haven't been drinking. I'd like to know the reason." Carter stepped closer, his boots crunching on the gravel shoulder. "You're refusing a lawful order?" It wasn't a question, it was a trap. She didn't take the bait. Instead, she reached for her phone, her fingers steady as she hit record. "Just so we're clear," she said, her voice calm but deliberate. "This interaction is being documented." Carter's eyes flicked to the phone, a brief flicker of hesitation crossing his face like a crack in a wall. But he didn't back down. "Out, now." His hand opened her door, the metal creaking in the cold night air. Cassandra stepped out, her posture straight, not defiant, but unyielding. In her civilian clothes, a simple jacket and jeans, she was just another driver to him. But the way she carried herself, shoulders back, eyes steady, told a different story. Carter ran her through a field sobriety test under the flickering streetlights, his flashlight bobbing as she walked a straight line, her steps precise, her balance flawless. She followed his instructions to the letter. No stumble, no waver, no hint of impairment. Still, he scribbled out a ticket for failure to maintain lane and thrust it into her hand. "Drive safe," he said, his tone clipped, already turning back to his cruiser. Cassandra stood there for a moment, the ticket crumpled in her fist, the cold air biting at her fingertips. She slid back into her SUV, the engine humming to life as she pulled away into the dark. But this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Back at the Canton police station, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a harsh glow over the rows of desks cluttered with coffee cups and paperwork. Nathan Carter leaned back in his chair, the faint smell of burnt coffee lingering in the air. 12 years on the force had carved a certain confidence into him, a belief that his badge gave him the final word. He typed up the stop in the system, his fingers moving mechanically. Failure to maintain lane, possible impairment, no arrest. His body cam went into the charger, just another piece of gear tossed aside. In the break room, he cracked open a bag of chips, the crunch echoing as he talked to Officer Miguel Ramirez, a younger cop with a quick smile and sharp eyes. "Some woman tried to flash her government ID like it was a get-out-of-jail-free card," Carter said, smirking. "Said she was military, thought she could talk her way out of it." Ramirez paused, his sandwich halfway to his mouth, a frown creasing his brow. "Wait, who was she?" Carter shrugged, popping another chip. "Cassandra Hayes, some fed with an attitude." Ramirez's eyes widened, his sandwich lowering slowly. "Major Hayes? From Fort Hamilton? She spoke at the academy last year, man. She's not just military, she's high up. Runs logistics, got a Bronze Star for leading a convoy under fire in Kuwait. She's the real deal," Carter scoffed, brushing it off with a wave of his hand. "Doesn't matter. On the road, I'm in charge." But Ramirez's frown didn't fade. He leaned forward, his voice low. "You sure about this one, Nate? She's not the type to let something slide." Carter's smirk faltered, just for a second, but he shook it off, crunching another chip. "Let her try," he said, his voice brimming with bravado. But deep down, a small voice whispered, a voice he ignored, telling him he might have just stepped into something bigger than he realized. Across town, at Fort Hamilton, the morning sun filtered through the blinds of Cassandra's office, casting thin stripes of light across her desk. The room was sparse but deliberate. A laptop, a stack of files, a framed photo of her unit in Kuwait, their faces dusty but smiling after a mission. She hadn't slept much, not because of anger, though it burned quietly beneath her surface, but because the stop kept replaying in her head. The way Carter's hand hovered over his holster, like she was a threat. The way his voice cut through her questions, dismissing her like she was nothing. She'd faced worse, mortar fire, sleepless nights in the desert, but this hit differently. It wasn't just about her. It was about every person who'd been made to feel small, silenced, or worse, because of who they were. Cassandra opened her laptop, the screen's glow reflecting in her eyes. She uploaded her phone footage, the timestamp clear. 12:17 a.m., February 3rd. Every word, every movement captured. She sent it to her legal team with a single line. Review and advise. Then she picked up the phone and called the office of the Inspector General, her voice steady as she filed a formal complaint, not just with the local police, but higher up, where it would carry weight. She didn't raise her voice, didn't make a scene. She just acted, her movements as precise as a sniper's aim. Sergeant Marcus Lopez, her aide, knocked softly and stepped inside, closing the door behind him. His uniform was crisp, but his eyes were heavy with concern. "You okay, ma'am?" he asked, his voice low, like he was stepping into sacred ground. Cassandra looked up, her face composed but her eyes burning with focus. "I'm handling it," she said. Lopez shifted his weight, his boots creaking faintly on the polished floor. I saw the footage. That guy was way out of line. You sure you want to push this? It could get messy, public even. Cassandra leaned back in her chair, her fingers tapping lightly on the desk, the rhythm steady like a metronome. I know it could, she said, but it's not about me, Marcus. It's about every soldier I train, every kid who's been pulled over and didn't have a camera, every person who's had to swallow their pride just to walk away. She paused, her gaze drifting to the photo on her desk. Her unit, years ago, standing together after a mission that nearly went wrong. When I was a kid, my mom told me to keep my head down in moments like that. Don't make waves, she'd say. I did that for years, thinking it kept me safe. But it doesn't. Silence just lets people like him think they're untouchable. Lopez nodded, a flicker of respect in his eyes. So what's the plan? We follow protocol, Cassandra said, her voice firm. We document everything. We don't stop until it's right. Lopez gave a small smile, the kind that said he'd follow her anywhere. Got it, ma'am. I'll get the JAG office on the line. Later that afternoon, Cassandra met with her lawyer, Elena Price, in a small conference room on base. The air was thick with the scent of fresh coffee and printer ink, papers spread across the table like a battle map. Elena, sharp and relentless, played the footage on her tablet, her eyes narrowing as Carter's voice barked through the speakers. This is gold, she said, tapping the screen. His body cam matches your video. No probable cause, no justification for the escalation. We've got a case. Civil rights violation, unlawful detainment, the works. Cassandra nodded, her expression unreadable. I'm not looking for headlines, Elena. I want accountability. Elena glanced up, studying her client. You know this could go public. People will talk about your rank, your record, your background. The word hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. Cassandra met her gaze, unflinching. Let them talk. I've spent my career proving who I am. 2 tours, 4 continents, lives on the line. This isn't any different. Elena's lips curved into a small, approving smile. All right, Major. Let's make this stick. Back at the station, Carter was back to his routine. Traffic stops, paperwork, the usual grind. But something was off. Ramirez kept giving him sideways glances, his usual banter replaced by a quiet unease. In the locker room, whispers started to spread. You hear about Carter's stop? One officer muttered to another. Might have messed with the wrong person. Carter shrugged it off, his jaw tight, but the air felt heavier, like a storm was brewing. That evening, he checked his email and froze. A notice from Internal Affairs stared back at him, the words formal complaint, bolded in black. His stomach dropped, the screen's glow casting shadows on his face. Cassandra's footage was already making waves he couldn't see, moving up the chain faster than he'd expected, and for the first time, he wondered if his badge could protect him. 3 weeks later, the courtroom was a study in contrasts. Polished wood benches packed with military personnel in crisp uniforms, local officers in civilian clothes, and a handful of curious onlookers whispering in the back. Cassandra walked in, her full-service uniform gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Her medals caught the light, her dark skin a stark contrast to the crisp white of her insignia. Every eye followed her, not because of how she looked, but because of the quiet authority she carried, like a general stepping onto a battlefield. Officer Carter sat at the defense table, stiff in a borrowed suit, his jaw clenched so tight you could see the muscle twitch. His lawyer, James Holt, leaned in, whispering something. But Carter's eyes stayed fixed on the judge, avoiding Cassandra's gaze. Elena Price called her to the stand. Major Hayes, describe the night of February 3rd, she said, her voice cutting through the room. Cassandra stood, adjusted her collar, and walked to the witness box with the same precision she'd used leading troops through hostile terrain. I was driving back from a base meeting around 12:15 a.m., she began, her voice clear and steady. I was pulled over by Officer Carter. I wasn't speeding or swerving. I complied fully, identified myself as a federal employee in a government vehicle. But he responded with aggression, demanded I exit without clear reason, and conducted an unnecessary sobriety test. The courtroom was silent, the air thick with tension. Elena nodded. Did you resist in any way? No, Cassandra said. I asked for clarification, that's all. And why did you record the stop? Elena asked. Cassandra's eyes swept the room, steady and unflinching. Because I've seen what happens when there's no record. I wanted the truth to stand. The words landed like stones, heavy and undeniable. Then the footage played, First, Cassandra's phone video, steady and clear, capturing Carter's sharp tone, his hand hovering near his weapon, his dismissive smirk. Then his body cam, confirming every detail. The unnecessary test, the clipped responses, the way he treated her like a suspect before she'd said a word. The jury sat stone-faced, but you could feel the shift in the room, like the air itself was holding its breath. A few jurors glanced at each other, their expressions unreadable but heavy with thought. James Holt, Carter's lawyer, approached the stand, his tone careful, like he was navigating a minefield. Major Hayes, isn't it possible Officer Carter was just following protocol? Cassandra didn't blink. No, I was compliant. There was no safety concern. He escalated because I asked questions. Holt pressed, his voice smooth but probing. You recorded the stop. Were you trying to provoke him? Cassandra's gaze didn't waver. I recorded to protect myself. I've lived long enough to know silence isn't safety. The room stayed quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like it's waiting for something to break. Then it was Carter's turn. He walked to the stand, his steps heavy, his face blank, but his eyes flickering with unease. The prosecutor leaned in, her voice sharp. Officer Carter, why did you ask her to exit the vehicle? Carter shifted, his hands gripping the edge of the stand. She seemed evasive. Did she disobey any commands? A pause, long and heavy. She questioned me. Is that illegal? Carter's voice dropped, barely audible. No. The prosecutor pressed further. If you'd known she was a major, would you have acted differently? Carter hesitated, his eyes darting to Cassandra, then away. Probably, he muttered. The admission hung in the air, raw and unguarded. He hadn't seen a person that night. Just someone who didn't move fast enough, didn't defer enough. And now, with Cassandra's rank and record laid bare, the jury saw it too. The verdict came after 2 days of deliberation. The courthouse was quieter now, the crowd thinner, just a few onlookers and a couple of local reporters scribbling notes. Judge Sarah Thompson shuffled her papers, her voice steady as she read the decision. In the matter of Hayes versus Carter, the jury finds in favor of the plaintiff. The court recognizes a violation of constitutional rights during an unlawful stop. Officer Carter's actions did not align with department policy or the expectations of professional conduct. Damages were awarded, $30,000, a permanent public record, and a recommendation for a full department review. Cassandra didn't smile or celebrate. She nodded once to herself and walked out, her boots echoing softly on the polished floor. Carter stood outside the courthouse, the February wind biting at his face. A few reporters hovered, their cameras clicking as he shielded his eyes with a folder. He didn't speak, didn't make a statement, just climbed into his car and drove off, the folder crumpled in his hand. Back at Fort Hamilton, Cassandra returned to her duties. Training soldiers, managing missions, her focus unwavering. But word of the case spread like wildfire. Her peers respected her more, not for the verdict, but for how she carried herself. Calm, relentless, unbreakable. Months later, Cassandra stood before a room of new recruits at Fort Hamilton, their faces fresh and eager, their uniforms still stiff from the press. The training hall was quiet, the air heavy with anticipation. She wasn't there to talk about logistics or combat tactics. She was there to talk about something deeper. How many of you think a uniform earns you respect? She asked, her voice steady, cutting through the silence. A few hands went up, some bold, some hesitant. She nodded, her eyes sweeping the room. I get it. I thought that too once. But respect isn't owed, it's earned. Every day, every choice, every moment when no one's watching. She paused, her gaze settling on a young soldier in the back, his eyes wide with attention. A few months ago, I was stopped by an officer who thought his badge made him untouchable. He didn't see my rank, my record, or my service. He saw someone he thought he could control. I could have stayed quiet, let it slide, walked away. I didn't. I documented it. I filed a complaint. I showed up in court. Not because of my rank, but because of who I am. The room was silent, but it was the kind of silence that carries weight. The kind that means something has landed. Your uniform, your badge, your title, it's not a shield, she continued, her voice rising just enough to fill the space. It's a responsibility. A weight you carry for everyone who came before you and everyone who will come after. Lead with integrity, act with discipline, and never forget, power without accountability is just a mask for weakness. The recruits didn't move, didn't speak. They just listened, their faces a mix of awe and resolve. Cassandra stepped back, closing the folder in front of her. She didn't need applause. She'd done what she came to do. This story isn't just about one night, one stop, or one courtroom. It's about what happens when someone stands up, speaks truth, and holds power to account. It's about the courage to demand respect, not with a raised voice, but with actions that echo louder than words. So, what do you think? How do we build a world where respect is earned, not demanded? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share this story if it hit home, and let's keep this conversation alive. Subscribe for more stories that make you think, challenge you, and remind you what it means to stand tall. I'll see you in the next one.